Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to A Life of Simple Joy with Jean Ann Duckworth. A Life of Simple Joy is brought to you by Devotions to Go, spiritual fast food for women on the go. Now, here's Jean Ann.
Here is Jean Ann indeed. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Well, it's morning for me. It's morning for at least half the country, so good afternoon to the rest of you. I am Jean Ann Duckworth, and this is A Life of Simple Joy. Currently, I am helping my listeners reduce the stress of the holiday season. I'm doing the 12 Simple Joys of Christmas, and every program I'm focusing on 12 different things that are just different areas involved in the holiday season, and showing you ways that you can reduce the stress of each of these. I've talked about preparing for the holidays and shopping and decorating, and yesterday I talked about baking. Today I'm talking about entertaining. The holidays are a great time to entertain. It's a wonderful time to be able to have people into your home and just share the spirit of the season with them. And there are so many different ways you can entertain. Now, I know some of you are out there just freaking out. The mere thought of entertaining, of having guests into your home simply overwhelms you. Well, it doesn't have to. Entertaining doesn't have to be a chore. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. The majority of it we do to ourselves. I remember one time, because I talk about home entertaining quite a bit. Men identify themselves, their self-identity, by what they do. Listen to men when they first meet one another, and they talk about activities. You know, where do you work, and what do you do for a living? Where do you work? Things like that. Hobbies, activities. Women, on the other hand, identify themselves by who they know. When two women meet one another, they attempt to find common ground through relationships. Do you have any kids? Where do they go to school? Where do you go to church? Oh, do you know? And you hear a lot of do you knows in that initial conversation. Unfortunately, over the years, we've gotten so busy, we've kind of limited our face time, our face-to-face contact with other people. I'm sad to say that too many women, too many of us, are using social networks online to establish relationships, and that isn't enough for us. We have to have that face-to-face contact. We need that physical contact. We need to be in the presence of people because we draw energy from that, and you can't draw energy through the computer, not as well. I have taught or done presentations online, and I do presentations in person. And it doesn't matter if there are, 25 people in a room and 100 people online. You can't draw that energy through the computer. I can get the energy from the smaller group in person. I can't get any energy from the people online. So knowing that, I always stress the fact that it's important for women to get together and fellowship. And fellowship is more than just entertaining. Fellowship is the opportunity to come together and exchange ideas and to renew yourselves. And you don't have to sit down and have deep philosophical or spiritual, theological type discussions. Just you should walk away from an event that involves fellowship feeling renewed. And we don't do it often enough. And when I talk about this, when I do retreats or conferences or anything like that, and I talk about you really need to entertain more because it builds relationships, it strengthens relationships. I hear the excuse, I really want to have people in, but my house isn't clean, this needs to be done, that needs to be done. My advice to you in that regard is terribly simple. When people are having fun, they don't notice the dust bunnies. They're not coming to do an inspection. I have done retreats at where, some of them occasionally are at very nice hotels, resorts. Some of them have been at Christian retreat centers where it's out partly up in the mountains, maybe at the foothills here in Southern California. And I remember one we did where we slept in cabins and it was cold. And if the people in the room next to you turned on their heat, you didn't get any heat. And it was a little rustic, but we had a fabulous time. Nobody sat around looking at, we joked about the heat issue and made fun about things. So, people don't care. People just want to have a good time. Plenty of food, plenty of friends and fellowship, and nobody cares about all the rest of it. It just really doesn't matter. We are now less than 2 weeks away from Christmas. I'm not trying to freak you out. I'm just trying to keep you on schedule. Now is the time to look at your schedule and see what has been done, what still needs to be done, and to develop your final battle plan, your final schedule, just, a plan of attack. So my goal is for you to get as much done as possible. So not this weekend, but the weekend right before Christmas, you can actually relax and enjoy yourself. Do a few last-minute things because you want to, not because you have to, because you're rushing like a maniac. No. And there's still time to order online. I tend to avoid the malls. Not because of the crowds, not because of the parking. I kind of like going out and watching it. I like going to the malls as a spectator, not as participant. I like going there and sitting there and watching what's going on around me. It's a lot of fun. But I avoid the malls as participant because this time of year it becomes too easy to get caught up in the frenzy and to overspend. My goal is to not cause myself stress when January comes. I really, really want to avoid that. And the way to avoid that is by not spending a lot of money in December. So, today, entertaining. It's not too late to plan a little holiday get-together. It's very simple to do. And as a matter of fact, I am finding more and more. It used to be, I still like getting information out right away to people. Just to plant seeds. In other words, when I have something going on, then, something I'm doing in advance, I like sending the information out just so it's kind of there and they know it. But I'm actually finding we are becoming such a last-minute, instant gratification kind of society that nobody really commits to anything or makes a commitment to anything until the last minute. So if you are planning, if you're hearing this and you're thinking, well, it's too late now to plan anything, no, it really isn't. You can actually plan something, a little open house for the weekend before Christmas, and actually I'll tell you in a minute. Let me write that down. I wrote down open house, but I've got an idea. I'll tell you how to do it. Let me go shopping. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm still here. There we go. Okay. An idea hit me, and I had to jot it down. It's kind of like taking a final. It's always amazing how all the answers come to you right as you walk out the door, having completed the test. Couldn't draw them up 15 minutes earlier. Oh, no. But as soon as you walk out that door, everything just flows free. All right, let me take a real quick break here, and I'll come back with some recipes for you, and then we'll get started talking about entertaining. I'm Jean Ann Duckworth, and this is A Life of Simple Joy. I told you that wouldn't be long. The recipes I'm sharing today are appetizers. If I have time, I may share my baked spaghetti recipe with you. All of these will be on the website at simplejoy.org, and they will be on the blog later today. At least some of them. I don't know if I'm going to I may put all of them on the blog, but I won't put all of them on the website. Excuse me. The first recipe is for chili cheese dip. You take 1 large can of chili, regular, chili. 1 small can of tomatoes with chili peppers. In other words, you want the Rotel tomatoes. And then a jar of processed cheese. If you cannot find that, Cheese Whiz, then get Velveeta and use it. Just cut the Velveeta up into cubes. Let me tell it to you that way first. If you're using Velveeta, you have to reverse the process. So if you're using processed cheese that's already liquid, then you're going to put the chili and tomatoes in a medium crock pot and heat for 1 to 2 hours. Heat it on low. It doesn't have to be on high. Add the cheese and mix thoroughly, and then serve with tortilla chips. And you don't need to prepare this dish until an hour or 2 before your event begins. And you want to keep it plugged in, and if you can, use a crock pot that has a warm setting. It doesn't need to continue cooking, but it should stay warm. Now, if you're going to use Velveeta instead, cut the Velveeta into cubes and let it melt, let it start melting a little bit, and then pour the chili and tomatoes in with it. As a matter of fact, you can just do the Velveeta in the crock pot first, and then pour the chili and tomatoes on top of it and let it go. After about half an hour or so, go in and start stirring it until everything's mixed up really well. And once everything, the cheese is melted and everything's mixed up, turn it to warm and just leave it on warm and keep stirring it so it doesn't get all, looking on the side of the crock pot. And then just, put tortilla chips, a bowl of tortilla chips out next to it and let people have fun. If you have, if people aren't just standing around dipping into the dip, what you can do is put a little ladle in there with it so they can put chips on their plate and drizzle the dip over their chips, and you got a little nacho action going there. So that is chili cheese dip. Christmas is the perfect time for entertaining, and it doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be stressful. It can be as simple as you would like it to be. It can be very last minute, which I will share what I was just writing down. I'll share that with you in a minute. But it doesn't have to just absolutely exhaust you. I feel the next day you should only be exhausted from a party that you throw because you had such a wonderful time that it absolutely wore you out. Not exhausted because you were so full of stress that you absolutely couldn't handle it. Before I begin, let me tell you this story. In the Bible, there's a story of two sisters named Mary and Martha. And one evening, I find it so ironic that the one's name was Martha. And if you don't know the story, you'll understand why in just a moment. One evening, Mary and Martha were having Jesus over to their house for dinner. And Jesus shows up, and Mary, escorts him into the living room and then proceeds to sit down and listen to everything he had to say. Mary was quite taken with Jesus. Jesus was very open to, teaching, talking to women, which was very unusual in that day and age. But, he listened, he sat there and he's talking to her, teaching her things. Martha, on the other hand, is in the kitchen, just busting her hump, getting everything ready for dinner, and getting more and more steamed by the moment because she's in there all alone doing all this work. And Mary's sitting in the living room entertaining their guest. And she just thinks that's so rude that Mary would be doing this. So finally Martha gets upset and goes in and looks at Jesus and says, I'd really appreciate it if you'd say something to my sister. I'm in there killing myself, trying to get dinner on the table, and she's just in here acting like she's a guest at this party rather than one of the hosts of this party. If it was left up to my sister, we'd be calling Pizza Hut for dinner. At this rate, dinner's never going to get on the table. So will you please tell her to get off her butt and get in the kitchen and help me? Now, at this point, I kind of feel sorry for Martha because if you've ever entertained and, you're the one who's stuck in the kitchen the whole time, you know exactly where she's coming from. And I'm not getting into a theological thing here, but unfortunately, Jesus turns to her and says, Mary's the one who made the right choice because I'm not going to be here forever, and she's taking advantage of my teachings while I'm here. And you would do well to come in here and sit down and visit with me also. Poor Martha. Poor Martha. But I understand exactly what's being said here. Jesus was just trying to, point out that, I'm not going to, let's not look at it from a theological point. Let's look at it from a home entertaining perspective. My attitude is that each of us should be Martha right up until the point where the doorbell rings, at which point we immediately go into Mary mode. Both of them made the right choice. Unfortunately, Martha just didn't know when to put it aside. Martha did not plan well, and because she didn't plan well, she was still stuck in the kitchen, mashing the potatoes and making the gravy, while Mary was entertaining the guest. I mean, what, did Martha assume her guest was going to sit there on the couch and play solitaire on his cell phone? And playing, I'm picturing Jesus sitting there playing Angry Birds. Sitting there doing a few texts and posting to Twitter while Martha gets dinner on the table. Mary and Martha get dinner on the table. No, your guest should not be neglected. You need to pay attention to your guest. So you have to plan things in such a way so that you're Martha right up until the doorbell rings. But as soon as the first guest walks into the door, well, at least the second guest, and I'll explain that in a minute, you are ready and you can become part of the party. When you host a party, it is not the event, it is about the people. And I think the reason so many women become stressed when they have a party is they think it's about the event. They're so wrapped up in the event, everything being perfect, their home being pristine, the table being decorated just so, the food has to be, elaborate, and it all has to be perfect and presented perfectly, and the least little thing that goes wrong, holy cow, absolutely freaking out. And it doesn't have to be that way. It is about your guest. And when you turn the focus away from your event and towards your guest, I honestly think things fall into perspective a lot more. If Martha had focused a little more on having a guest in her home, and Mary, we really need to work together and get everything ready so when our guest shows up, dinner's on the table and we're ready to enjoy his company. Things would have gone a lot smoother for her, but, then we wouldn't have had this great lesson. So thank you, Martha, for making, a bad call and teaching all the rest of us how to do things correctly. If you want to focus on the event, then you need to become a party planner or a caterer or whatever, but do that. But when you entertain in your home, it's about the people. It's not about the event. That having been said, today the word I am using is party. Party, party, party. P. You know where I'm going with P. P is for plan. The way to reduce the stress of any event you host is to work smarter, not harder. Are you tired of hearing it yet? I liked it. The Simple Joy of Christmas is available on Amazon, is an ebook in the Kindle store. And I was giving it away all last week. You can, when you register for their lending program, you're able every 3 months, in every 3-month period, you're able to give your book away 5 days, 5 times. And because it's a Christmas book, usually I spread things out. For devotions to go, it's spread out. But for this, I did it all in one shot. And somebody was nice enough to write a review, a very nice review, gave it 4 stars. Their one complaint was that a lot of the material is repetitious because a lot of the material is based on the 3 rules of simple joy. Keep it simple, ask for help, take care of yourself. And I looked at that and I thought, well, yeah, they're right. And the book will be in print for next Christmas, and I'm looking to add more material to it. As a matter of fact, a lot of the material that I'm doing this year for the program will be in next year's book. But as I looked at that, I thought, there's a reason I'm repetitive. It's because if I knew I could say it once and women would go, oh, okay, and then start doing it, I wouldn't have to repeat myself. But I know it takes saying it over and over again because it takes you doing it over and over and backsliding, making a mistake and forgetting, and then having to do it once again for you to really get it. Sorry, I just realized I buried something important on a stack of papers here. It takes having to repeat things. So that's why I always, work smarter, not harder, because it's terribly important. And I know in a panic, you forget. When we panic, it becomes, we throw ourselves into something and we start running off and we forget the plan and we forget to plan. Whenever you're getting ready to entertain, the first thing you always have to do is to sit down and start working out a plan. You sit down with paper and pencil, and the reason you do this is by working things out on paper, it allows you to do a couple of things. Number one, it allows you to see if what you want to do is feasible. You really have to see it in black and white. I have to see it at least in black and white. For me to see, this is honestly too much work in the amount of time I have left. I really can't do this. And then I can either go back and plan a different kind of event, or I can decide I'm just going to have to, after the first of the year, maybe in February, I can do a friendship event and have people over. So that's number one. Number two is if you feel overwhelmed by entertaining, when you sit down and you write it out and you look at it, you can tell yourself, oh, this isn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. I can actually handle this. Or you can look at it and think, wow, this is a lot harder than I thought it would be. I don't think I can do this, and scrap the whole thing. Or meet in the middle and this is hard, but I still think I want to do it. Let's see if I can find something a little simpler and take it from there. And there you have it. Paper and pencil are your best friend when you're entertaining. So the first thing you want to do is you begin with who. Any event you plan has to begin with the people. It's about the people, not the event. You begin with the people. Make a list, not carved in granite, of who you think you would like to invite to your party. Include anybody you think you might want to have. You can, at this point, have a rough idea. I think I might like to do a formal dinner. And then who would I like to have at this event? I'm not saying you can't have an idea what it is you want to do. I'm just saying don't go and plan out a formal sit-down dinner and then do your guest list and realize there are 20 people you want to invite and your table only holds 8. That doesn't work. And you've just caused yourself a lot of frustration. If you kind of have an idea what it is you want to do, start with your guest list. Make a few initial phone calls, not inviting people. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. Do you think you might be available whenever? It's not definite yet. I'm just kind of feeling people out, so I know about how many people might be here. And then you have an idea, you can go from there. So once you know who you want to invite, then you can start planning what type of party do you want to have. If you might have an idea, and this is why you're going to say, oh, you're going back on what you said. You might have a small group of friends that have done wonderful things for you during the year. I know things are tough for a lot of people. Maybe you've had a struggle this year, and there are some people you'd really like to thank, but you can't go out and buy a lot of gifts or anything like that. So instead, what you want to do is you would like to have these people over for a formal dinner. Well, you did begin with who, because you know exactly who it is you want to invite. And you want to do a formal dinner, but if the who is 6-8 people and you can manage to do some kind of table setup with that many people, you're fine. You're okay. If not, then you can still do something formal. You may just need to do a buffet instead, but it might be a little fancier, for lack of a better word, than it would be, if you're doing an open house. So determine what type of event you want to have. And with the holidays, there is absolutely no limit to the type of event. I'm going to do a rundown on it, but, you can do an open house. You can do a tea. You can do it as a formal tea, or you can do an open house type tea. You can do a cocktail party. You can do a formal dinner. You can do a real casual dinner, a decorating party, or just, maybe it's not an open house, but you want to have there's no limit to what you do. It's only limited by your imagination. So once you know who you have and what type of party you're going to have, you can nail down exactly when you want to do it. You usually have a vague idea when you start out, but if you're doing a formal sit-down dinner and you have a day job, obviously you don't want to do your dinner on a weeknight because it'll just overwhelm you unless you take certain shortcuts that I can offer. You can actually do a formal sit-down dinner on a weeknight. You just have to be prepared to not cook all the food from scratch. Yes, indeed, there are ways you can do it. One time I came up with an idea for a party called I Know That It's Late, but Dinner's at 8. And the premise of the party is that you're sitting at work and, you're thinking, this is particularly true of younger people who, maybe don't have kids, maybe aren't even married. But what do I want to do tonight? Well, I think I'd like to have some friends over. Maybe they could come over for dinner and you start making calls. How can you have plan a dinner party for that evening? And I actually came up with a way that it can be done. And a nice sit-down dinner, just none of the food, you cook the food, but none of the food's made from scratch. You're dying to know how you do it, aren't you? I'll tell you in a little bit. Who's coming? What type of party it's going to be, when it's going to be, where are you going to host it? I think I've told you, we live in a Craftsman Cottage and Historic District, and there is a smaller house. Actually, the house behind us is larger than our house, but it looks house behind us. If you go down our driveway straight back, people think it's the garage, but it's not. It's a second house. The garage is at a right angle from the second house. The people who lived back there a couple of years ago did a Christmas party one Saturday evening. And a number of the people who were attending were smokers. And she doesn't allow smoking in her house, but she understood this. So they borrowed a series of pop-ups, little canopies, and did them in front of their house and our garage. And in back of our house, it's a square pad where they can park. They parked on the street, and they put the pop-ups up, and they had it's Southern California. It's not like it was Green Bay. They had a little portable fire pit out there. Now, the problem they ran into is it rained. Holy cow, it was a gully washer. So they had to set the pop-ups up in such a way that, number one, they wouldn't blow away, and number two, they they could walk out of the house and not get drenched. She and I were talking about it before the party, and one of the things I suggested, I said, well, if you're concerned about the rain, why don't you open your garage? And people can actually step in there. And she just looked at me. I hadn't thought about that. So they opened the garage door and set one of the pop-ups so that you could actually go out of the house under the pop-up and into the garage and stay out of the rain. So it worked out well. The where doesn't mean you have to hold it away from your home. It just means you have to be able to determine how the party can flow and how you can fit people and how this can all work. You might be able to use your back porch or back patio, your backyard, your front yard, your front porch. One time when we had an open house, I actually put the cooler with the beer on the front porch. And it kind of kept things flowing. Some people would go out there and they'd stay out there. And we had a few smokers and they stood out there and they smoked. So, the where is what is logistics of how you're going to set things up and keep things flowing, because you have to have traffic patterns. You if you're doing an open house with a buffet, you can't have the food and the bar right next to one another, or you will have this crush of people in one corner of the room. And yes, now that you know that, plan it. Oh, okay. Excuse me a moment. Katie is heading home. That's my daughter. She just texted me. And I got her message. It's amazing. I never hear from people, and I start to do this, and suddenly I hear from absolutely everybody. Let me tell Mr. Diva that Katie is heading home. On her way. There we go. He'd say, oh, you shouldn't let yourself be distracted. if you can't understand this, and I'm just in a world of hurt. So once you know who you want to invite and what kind of event you're going to have and when you're going to do it and where you're going to have it, then you can develop your plan. And the plan is, you figure out your menu based on the event and how many people. You create your shopping list. You decide how you're going to set things up as far as, if it's your table, do you need a couple of, you can rent tables, a couple of buffet type tables so you can, put 12, 18 people at one table, one long table, and you get chairs, all of that. So then you can develop your plans, and that's when the infamous list I always talk about come out. I take paper, I fold it in half lengthwise, I fold it in half across. It creates a little booklet. I do as many of those as I have to and put one inside the other, so I have a little book clipped together. And it's my master list and my master shopping list, and then it's a breakdown of where each, Party City, Bevmo, Ralph's, Kroger's, whatever, Cub Foods, whatever store it is where you shop, and where you have to go to get everything. There you go. So that's the P for plan. Let me do a event, open house. Let me give you an idea for an open house. It suddenly struck me. If you really want to do an event and you want to do an open house, plan an open house for the Saturday before Christmas and tell your friends that they're going to be out doing last-minute errands and running around and taking care of things. So you're planning an open house where they can pop in while they're doing their last-minute shopping or to have dinner, plan it from 5 to 8, 4 to 8 in the afternoon, 4 to 7. They can pop in and have a little nosh, relax for a few minutes before they head out and do run more errands. They can stop on their way home and have dinner. It's a great way to host your friends, visit with your friends, and fulfill a need for them. If you really want to have some fun, you can set up a wrapping station and let them wrap presents. If you have teenage kids, let them wrap presents for people. Here, my son brought in his friends from the football team, the debate team, the chess club, whatever it might be. The kids from the youth group at church are here. They're going to be back in the bedroom wrapping your presents. You can go back there and tell them what you want. And they're raising funds for their, trip to the state capitol. Nobody does that anymore. No, everybody's going to, Cabo or whatever. They're raising money for their mission trip, whatever it might be. And just, hey, I really like this idea. Invite people to come over and just relax for a little while and get their presents wrapped, and then they can go home and have a quiet evening. So open houses are very easy to do. You just do a buffet and you plan food where it can be easily replenished. I usually do a cheese tray, and I do my baked spaghetti because I can keep, having more in the oven. And you can do chili and just keep refilling it. You can have dips. I do cookies and Christmas cakes. I go to Trader Joe's and get their their grenadine cake. They have little pound cakes that are liqueur flavors. I get amaretto cake. That's the one I really like, the almond flavored one. So you can get these different things, eggnog and wine. You have to do an elaborate bar with an open house. A little glass of wine is plenty for people, especially with what you're serving. And you're set. And one of the things you can serve is my sister's fabulous dill dip. You begin with 1 cup of sour cream, a cup of mayo, 2 teaspoons of dill, 1 teaspoon of celery salt, 1 tablespoon of parsley, and a tablespoon of dried onion. Mix well, chill, and then you're going to take one of those round loaves of rye bread, and you cut the top off of it, and you pull the inside out into pieces, or cut them out, whatever it is you do. And once the bread is hollowed out, you put the dill dip inside, and you put it in the center of a platter, and you put the pieces of bread around it. And then I usually have a couple of other loaves of bread. One I cut up, save one whole, because if you're doing a long event, the bread bowl gets kind of soppy after a while. You may want to replace it. So that's dill dip, and it's really easy, and I love dill dip. It's really, really good. Let me take a quick break, and I'll be right back with more. Oh, yeah. One thing I wanted to add when it comes to planning your party is make your plans as detailed as possible and visualize the event you want. I'm not talking, Martha Stewart, Christmas in my home. God bless you, Martha. I love you to pieces. But, wow, just you have to make this work for you. If you have the ability to do things on her level, I admire you to absolutely no end, because I'd want to sit down and weep if I had to try that. The more you can visualize your event, the more you can see exactly what it is you want to accomplish, the easier it is for you to accomplish. So take some time. And the easiest way to visualize, when you're lying in bed at night in the dark before you go to sleep, just kind of picture it there in the dark. And it makes it a lot easier to see it and what it is you want to accomplish. So, visualize. A in part is attitude. For some of you, you may have to entertain, and I do mean have to. For whatever reason, you have an obligation, and it has to be fulfilled. You may have a spouse that needs to invite coworkers to your home. You may have family who is insistent you're the one who is hosting Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, whatever, this year. Perhaps a number of people have had you to events and you feel now it's your turn, you have to do something. But you feel an obligation. That is not the way to go into an event, even if it is because it's something that has to be done. You can still approach it with the right attitude. For any party to be successful, you have to have a positive attitude about the event. If you are dreading it, you are resenting it, you feel it is a huge chore and bother and an obligation, you are not going to enjoy yourself. And like it or not, you set the tone for the entire party. If you don't have a good time, if you don't like what you're doing, nobody is going to enjoy themselves. And you will have no one to blame but yourself. Therefore, even if it is something you have to do, you have to go into it with the right attitude. And even if it's something that you're obligated to host, you have to make it work for you. So you have to have the right attitude. You cannot look at any event as being a burden. If you do, your guests are going to sense it. It's not going to be the event that you're going to resent. It's going to be every one of those people that walks in your door. Tell me, do you want to attend a party where you can just feel the hostess really doesn't want you or anyone else there, and she's just biding her time until you all get the heck out of her house and she can go back to doing what she wants to do. I don't think you want to be at something like that. I know I wouldn't. And it just, it makes it just causes a lot of tension. So you've got to shake that off. You've got to make the best of it, and you have to go on and do this thing. Even if it's because it's something you want to do, and you feel overwhelmed with stress whenever you think about having people into your home. Let's see. As I said, you have to make it work for you. So if your house is the only one where everybody fits, and you did such a great job last year, and now suddenly, your family's saying, we want you to host again this year, that's fine. Make it work for you. Make it the kind of event you want it to be. Hold it at the time that works. Maybe, you have younger kids, so you don't want it to go to 10 o'clock at night because you want to be able to get up the next morning and have some fun. Go out shopping or, go do something with family, whatever it might be. You're going to need to do that. You've got to make it work for you. And if anybody complains, well, we're having everybody over, the family over, and it's going to be from noon to 6, and I really need everybody to go home by 6 o'clock because it'll be a long day for the kids, and we've got plans for the next day. And if somebody complains, well, usually we go to like 8, 10 o'clock, and we want to be like that, then you pause for a moment, get very quiet, and when they're finished kvetching about it, you say in a very calm voice, all right, I understand. Well, then I guess you should host it this year since, you wanted to go to 10 o'clock. I'll make sure everybody knows it's going to be at your house instead of at our house. That's really great. Thanks for doing that. I really appreciate it. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help, and then hang up the phone. Give them a little while to stew. Do not call them back. They will be calling you back. And when they do, and well, wait, I can't do it because, then we're going to do it the way that works for me. If it's going to be at my house, it has to work for me. I can't be doing this in a way that meets the needs of everybody else. I'm willing to open my home and host this event, but I'm going to need people to help out. I'm going to need people to bring food, and I'm going to need it to be held at the times that work best for me. And that's all there is to it. And if that doesn't suit people, then somebody else has to hold it. Which is it going to be? And then stay quiet. Don't keep talking. Let them figure out which way it's going to go. And either it's going to end up being the way you want it to be, or it's going to end up being hosted by someone else. Now, you're sitting there going, oh, that works great, but, what do I do when 6 o'clock comes and they're all still sitting around yakking? You begin putting the food away. And when somebody says something about, well, why are you putting the food away? I'm sorry, I made it very clear. And bear in mind, you make it till 6 because it's going to take you till 7 to get them all out the door. That my kids needed the rest. I wanted some quiet time with my family. It's time for everybody to go home. And especially if it's your family, you don't be rude about it, but you don't have to pull any punches. Put the food away. And if worse comes to worse, start getting your kids in their pajamas and start shutting things down. The bar closes at 2 o'clock in the morning. They don't let people stand there and start hemming and hawing and telling them, oh, but no. The restaurant closes at 10. That's it. They start turning lights off. When you unplug the Christmas tree and, come walking out in your pajamas, they're going to get a hint. And if somebody, your mom calls you the next day and talks about how rude you are, you need to make it clear to her that, yes, I understand. But I was not the rude one. I made it terribly clear what the parameters were for this party. And I also gave plenty of people the opportunity to host it if they wanted to extend it to a later hour. And no one stepped up. I think the rude people were the ones who did not respect my home and my event. 6 o'clock is what I said. I gave everyone until 7. And after that, it was over. That was it. And some people may not talk to you, but that may not be a bad thing because they're probably the ones that were the rudest, and you don't need the negativity in your life. Attitude. Sometimes it's a sassy attitude you need. Never let others dictate what it is you're going to do. Funny, my brain always knows. Don't let them try to tell you what kind of party you're going to have, what kind of food you're going to serve, what the hours are going to be. Make it work for you. That's all there is to it. And if somebody, even if it's your mom, is really insistent, then you need to very politely lay it out that they need to host the event. Since you have very clear-cut ideas how this thing needs to go, then it needs to be at your house. Let me know what I can do to help. Oh, there, the baby's crying, got to go. Click. And then wait for the phone to ring. And it will ring. And if you still need to calm down, then let it keep ringing and talk later. I know there are people out there just absolutely dying by what it is I'm saying, but, it is your event, and you have to make it work for you. You. Tea. Let's host a tea. I like teas because it isn't a meal. Tea is an elaborate snack. And I did a segment on tea one time. I'm not going to go into great details about tea, but you can do tea without having to wear yourself out. You can do a tea as either a buffet where, do an open house for your female friends and serve tea and tea-type refreshments, tea sandwiches and small pastries, small sweets, and 1 or 2 varieties of tea. And I usually serve a little wine or sherry, something like that, and let it go at that. Or you can do a sit-down tea. But again, you want to plan your sit-down tea so that you're able to sit at the table. I never forget one of the very first teas I did. A woman who attended tea frequently looked at me and said, I've been to many teas in private homes, but this is the first time the hostess ever sat down and joined us. And I thought that was sad. Why in the world do I want to do all this work for a party and then I don't get to attend? Nope. I attend my own party. That's all there is to it. As a matter of fact, I throw parties for me. And anybody else who comes is just lucky enough that I invited them. Because if it were just me there, I'd be happy. Because, then all the food I prepared is for me. Now, you attend your own party, and that's all there is to it. A recipe. Party pizzas. Oh, these are fun. I like these. You need 1 loaf of party rye. Usually I find party rye in the deli section of the grocery store. If you go to the deli where they have the lunch meats and all, usually there's a shelf right below the deli counter on the customer side where they have specialty kinds of breads, artesian breads, whatever. And party rye are those little bitty loaves of rye bread. They're about a quarter of the size of a regular. If you took a square piece of bread like Wonder Bread and you cut it into, well, maybe not Wonder Bread anymore, but, like Wonder Bread used to be, the sandwich bread, and you cut it into 4s. A party rye is about the size of a fourth of that. You can use party rye Or I also find the little bite-sized bagels, and I use those. You cut them in half. A jar of pizza sauce and shredded mozzarella cheese. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees. Place the party rye on an ungreased cookie sheet. And usually what I do is I put aluminum foil on my cookie sheet and put the party rye on that. Bread can be placed close together because nothing spreads. Drop spoonfuls of pizza sauce on each slice of bread and spread around the bread. Sprinkle the tops of the pizzas with cheese and place in the oven for 5 to 10 minutes until the sauce bubbles and the cheese melts. Serve immediately. And you can usually get, a dozen and a half slices. And you can have extras ready to go on the aluminum foil, and you just put it on the bread on the cookie sheet and pop it in the oven. So party pizzas, very easy. I'm not going to take a break here. I want to keep going. We're having, old houses just make you crazy. We're having problems with the plumbing today, and we've got somebody coming over, and Mr. Diva was holding off contacting this guy because he didn't want him coming while I was on the air. So I'm going to try and get done so we can have the plumbing straightened out. R is for refreshments. You, again, need to make this work for you. So refreshments can take 3 forms. You can buy, you can do homemade where everything's from scratch. So let me give you an example with lasagna. You can buy all the ingredients and make a pan of lasagna from scratch. You can buy lasagna that is pre-made, like Stouffer's lasagna, but you bake it. Or you can go somewhere and buy it where it's been made and already cooked, and all you have to do is bring it home. You can use any, all, or a mixture of these 3. You need to make it work for you. Let me tell you what my rule of thumb is when it comes to refreshments for entertaining. Number 1, I like lots of food. What I tend to do is I like to do a variety, but I don't go overboard with variety. I would rather have depth than breadth. What that means is I would like to have, rather have a lot of a few things than a ton of dishes, but only a little bit of each. And then something's really popular and you run out. Things I make from scratch, I like doing because I like mine better, or because it just impresses the heck out of people that I actually made this. Bread is an example of that. I make homemade bread, and people really like the fact that, you made this, yes. And it's really simple. Like the rye bread for the dill, I could actually make that myself because I have a recipe, and I have a bread machine, so it's not like I'm standing there kneading it myself. So when I entertain, some things I make, let's do an open house, for example. When I do an open house, I tend to do my baked spaghetti, and then I do this pasta marinara because a number of people I know are vegetarians. Or I do chili, and I do chili that has meat and a vegetarian chili. I do my Jean's Beans chili. I do a variety of dips. Some of them I make from scratch. Usually your best friend, there are 2 good friends you have when you're doing a party. One is Trader Joe's and the other one is Costco. Both of them have just an incredible assortment of appetizers and snack type foods that you can use for your event. And just go there and before you're ready to shop and look around and make a list of the kind of things you see and what it is you want. So I'll buy dips, and I buy hummus, and I get salsas. I like pico de gallo best, and guacamole if I'm doing the chili, or I just do regular dips. And like I said, I get the liqueur breads, the amaretto and the Cointreau, and that, and do a bread tray, and I do a cookie tray, and I have my homemade cookies, and I get the meringues from Trader Joe's, and I'll get some chocolates from Trader Joe's and do a tray of those, and maybe some of the brownie bites. And, there's all kinds of things I can do where I don't have to wear myself out. So I usually do the main dish, and then I buy all the rest of the stuff, and it makes it a whole lot easier. You just have to decide how much time you have and what it is you want to do. Now, when I talk about having something catered, you don't have to call the caterer. If you're able to call the caterer, you're probably not listening to me. But for example, you can go to Honey Baked Ham and get the ham and a couple of sides, and those are taken care of. Or even grocery stores do things like that, where you can get, order meals and have the whole meal done, and you bring it home and have everything out. So there's an assortment of things you can do, different ways you can handle this when it comes to refreshments, and that includes your bar. You can do something as simple as wine. You can go a little more elaborate. When I do a tea, if it's early enough in the day, I often do mimosas. And that way the women can have mimosas while I'm doing a few last-minute things and getting ready for us to eat. Or you can do a full-blown bar. If you're going to do a full-blown bar, if there is one thing, one expense where you have a little more of an expense that I would suggest, it would be hiring a bartender. You can get a college kid to come in just so long as they know what it is they're doing. But hire a bartender. The reason for this is it stops you or your spouse from being stuck making drinks. Also, a bartender can kind of keep an eye on people to make sure nobody's overindulging. And if they are, they can give you a head up. That's why you don't really want a kid. You want somebody who's a little bit older that can let you know there's a problem, and you can deal with it, because you do not want anybody leaving your party intoxicated and then proceeding to drive. Not only because you might be held responsible for it, but just on a personal level, you don't want anybody getting hurt because of your party. So refreshments, do things that work for you. And if you're doing an event that is going on over an extended period of time, make sure you've got food. After a while, the dill dip has mayo in it. I've got to throw it out and put fresh out. So be prepared to change things out and keep things fresh, even if something's left over. You can't leave it sitting there. You have to keep changing things out. Next event. It is my open office. This is was my favorite holiday event. It came about quite simply. Years ago, when I was working in the audio department of a large church, and I worked on the Christmas program that they did, I worked exceptionally long hours. And there came a time long about the 15th of December where I had no more days off until, Christmas Day could count, but not really, because the Christmas Eve services went on so long that it was usually 3 o'clock in the morning before we got home on Christmas. So I was actually at work on Christmas. So it was usually Eve before I had a day off. I felt bad because people were going to parties. There was an event the women's ministry hosted every year that I couldn't attend because I worked. and it made me sad. So what I did was the Monday before I started that no days off stretch, I hosted an open house. I did it in the afternoon and invited all the women from work. And they could come over on their lunchtime, and I did the spaghetti, 2 kinds of spaghetti, and the dips and the cakes and cookies and so on. And we had a really nice time. I didn't serve any alcohol, just served, sodas and coffee, things like that, sparkling cider, and we went from there. Then one year I came down with the flu and was horribly sick for about a week. And I'm not looking for a pity party here, but I have asthma. And the problem when you get the flu and you have asthma is your doctor yells at you if you didn't get the flu shot, because you run a high risk of developing pneumonia. It's why, regardless of the age, asthmatics are told get flu shots. And I got my flu shot this year, so don't scold me. I was so sick and so weak, and I'd already sent out the flyers for my open house. And Mr. Diva came to me and said, I know this is going to make you very unhappy, but you can't do it. You just can't. And I cried. All these women at work were going to all these events and doing things together, and I couldn't participate. I was just this odd person out, which is why I always felt I never really fit in with the group, because they were all... the girly girls working together, and I worked with all the boys, and they were doing these party things, and I couldn't do it because I had to work. Enough of that. So I still wanted to have a party and couldn't figure out what to do, and then I got this idea. My job during the Christmas program was I put the wireless microphones on the performers, and I had an audio board in the hallway down in the basement of the church where I put the microphones on, and then I could test them to make sure we could hear everything okay. And right next to where I set up, I had an office. I went in and I decorated my office. I had a little bitty Christmas tree, and I strung Twinkie lights, fairy lights, all around my office so it was well lit up. And then I went out and I bought dips and chips, and I had a cheese platter, and I had cookies and sweets and things. And the way the office was arranged, it was kind of a weird pie shaped. It looked just like a slice of pie. And the door opened going towards the pointy part of the pie, the skinny end of the pie. So I would set a table up behind the door there so that the kids that hung around the wireless table couldn't see all this food. And then I sent out invitations, and I did it for 2 days. And people came down, and they sat with me, and they ate, and we had Christmas music going, and we had a really nice time. And I got to have my open house without any of the stress, and I was at work. So have some refreshments, set them up in your office, and let it be known that, you don't want to interfere with the flow of work, but make sure people know that, you're entertaining guests in your office, and just let them pop in and out and visit with them for a while. That's an open office. So plan your attitude, refreshments. T is for 2 things. It's for team and time. The way you make this work is you have to have other people help you. I was watching, I think it was NBC News last night, and Dr. Nancy Silverman was reinforcing exactly what I say all the time. It's always great when the experts agree with you. She was doing a thing on caregivers, and especially people who are dealing with Alzheimer's. Caregivers in family members. She did a story. She talked about one man who had triplets in high school, and he was a single parent, and he was caring for his mother with Alzheimer's, and then a woman who was caring for her husband with Alzheimer's. And she said some things that you could apply to entertaining or just to life in general. She said, number one, that people in this position have to ask for help. And you can't be general about it. That you have to say, could you take my mom, would you be willing to take my mom to her doctor's appointment on Tuesday at 1 o'clock? Or could you come over and, stay with my mom for a couple of hours while I run errands, or my husband, or whatever? But ask for help and be specific what it is you need and when you need it. The other thing she said is you have to take care of yourself, because the problem that they run into, I found this just absolutely incredible, because I saw this happen, unfortunately, with my in-laws, is the caregiver devotes so much time to the person, and they were specifically talking about Alzheimer's. They're not getting enough sleep. They're not, the man that was taking care of his mom said he only sleeps a couple hours at night. He's lost quite a bit of weight since he started doing this, and he's under a lot of stress. That people who have that are under the stress, aren't eating well, and aren't sleeping themselves run the risk of onset of Alzheimer's. That you have to be resting. You have to be taking care of yourself. You have to find ways to get out and do other things away from the person you're taking care of, whom you're taking care. And, you have to make yourself a priority. And I found that interesting, and it's exactly what you have to do here. You have to ask for help, and you have to be specific. If you are the one who hosts the family Christmas party, you have to let the entire family know, not just the ones who live in your house, but everybody else. You have to assign them tasks. You have to let them know that the Christmas party is no longer going to be spectator sport, that everyone plays. And everybody goes home a winner because everybody played. And it doesn't have to be anything, when I was a little kid and the family came over for parties, my job was beforehand to make sure there was plenty of ice. During the party, I learned to become a bartender. They drank highballs. It was very easy. And I'm not talking about when I was 4 or anything, but it doesn't take much. I didn't have to be very old to learn how to crack ice and pour, scotch and water in a glass. I didn't have to be a genius, and I'm a boomer, so it was okay back then. And I also was responsible for going around and emptying ashtrays. So even when you're little, there are tasks you can do. Keeping trash emptied, taking people's coats and putting them in the bedroom, whatever it might be, there are things that can be done. A little kid can, pass things around. And people can bring different dishes. Make it a potluck. If you're providing the meat and maybe the mashed potatoes or whatever, somebody else can be providing all the side dishes and the desserts. You don't have to do everything. So it takes a team. Get the team involved. And for a team, one of the people you want to involve, and I say this before, when I told the story of Mary and Martha, there are always last-minute things you have to do. It's just the nature of the beast. No matter how well you plan, when the doorbell rings and the first guest shows up, there are still a few little things you have to take care of in the kitchen before you're ready to come out and take part in your event. I think Martha would have been all right if she and Mary had an agreement that Mary was going to be the one to answer the door and entertain their guests for the first few minutes while Martha finished up what she had to do and could come out and join them. Such was not the case. I make it a practice to invite someone to show up early when I entertain, a good friend that I don't mind seeing me I'm in my robe and I have short hair, but if you have curlers in your hair or whatever, if you know things are rather intense, maybe you've got little kids or a baby or something, you might have somebody show up as much as an hour early to take care of things so you can finish getting yourself ready and then do the last minute things. This is a person who is responsible for just, first of all, it relieves the stress because I'm not waiting for the doorbell to ring and that last person, the first person to show up. They've already showed up, and it doesn't matter where I am in the preparation process. Secondly, they're the one who answers the door while I'm finishing up doing what I'm doing, and they get my guest a beverage while I'm getting finished. They keep me company in the kitchen before anybody shows up. Maybe, like if it's a tea, the first thing I serve at a tea is salad, so they put the salads on the table and kind of start that rolling. So, have somebody you trust who can show up early and be with you and help you with those last-minute things so that when the party gets started, you're ready to attend the party. Let's see. Time. Figure out how much time you have and make sure you plan an event that fits the amount of time you have. If you only have, if you have limited time, then you probably don't want to plan a formal sit-down dinner that is terribly labor-intensive when it comes to the menu. Yes, in a minute I'll do formal dinners and tell you how you can have one at the last minute. You can do it, but host an event and the size of an event based on how much time you have to prepare for it. And remember, there's an equation, not a real mathematical equation, but you either have to invest time or money. If you don't have enough time to clean your house, you're going to have to pay somebody to come in and do it. So you have to figure out whether you have the money to do that sort of thing. Time or money. It's one or the other. It can't be both. And then, let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah. So ask for help, get other people involved, and then plan an event that fits the amount of time you have to prepare for it. How do you do a formal dinner at the last minute? And you don't have to go out and buy absolutely everything. One simple tip I have is when I entertain, I don't use all real dishes. I use some disposable. I mix and match it so that there isn't as much cleanup afterwards. And that way, if you don't have, the formal set of china, you are actually able to go out. There are some beautiful, beautiful disposable patterns now. There's one company, Boston International, that I've worked with in the past. Go to their website and see if you can sign in or do a Google search so that you can see the images for some of they have some where it's white and gold with scroll work on it, and it's very lovely. And you can work with it and create a beautiful table at the last minute and not have it be quite so overwhelming because there's so many dishes that have to be done. You can buy chicken cordon bleu or chicken Kiev that's frozen and bake it. You can do a wild rice. You can do asparagus or Stouffer's makes a spinach souffle, something like that. There are potatoes. Oh, you're doing a wild rice. You do rolls, nice dinner rolls with it, and buy a cheesecake pre-made. You can do a very elegant, formal sit-down dinner with prepared food that you cook yourself, and because of that, you actually can do it at the last minute. You can have hors d'oeuvres, go to Trader Joe's or Costco and look at their hors d'oeuvres. You come home from work and you turn on the oven and you start preheating it and get your bar set up go out and, get the frozen hors d'oeuvres set on the tray, and then start getting yourself ready. Take a quick shower while the oven's heating up and put the hors d'oeuvres in the oven, go back in and put your makeup on, set your bar up. Oh, you've done that already. You want to have a small chafing dish so you keep your hors d'oeuvres warm. Put the entree in the oven, start cooking the rice, start steaming your vegetables or whatever other vegetable you have. The table can be set the night before. Put the rolls on the table, the butter on the table, get the coffee started. Get the dessert set out and ready, have the dessert plates ready. And see, it's actually very simple. It's very easy to do. You just have to, it's all choreography. You've got to choreograph it. If you watch choreography, don't you ever wonder, why don't they crash into one another on stage? Well, because they all know exactly where they're going and what it is they're doing, and you can do the exact same thing. Preheat the oven while you're showering. Have the hors d'oeuvres cooking while you're putting your makeup on. Have the dinner cooking while you're getting dressed and finishing lighting the candles and turning on the music. Then your guests show up. You have cocktails. You get dinner on the table, and you're flying. You're ready. You're styling. Which leads me to why is for you. Number one rule of entertaining when you're using Simple Joy, you have to attend your own party. I've been to parties where the hostess spent the entire time in the kitchen. You would have thought, she was the caterer. You never see her, or it's just in passing. And when you try to talk to her, she has to hurry because she's got something in the oven. That should not be you. I don't want that to be you. I want you to be able to relax and enjoy yourself. I want you to be able to attend your own party. Your guest, you set the tone for the party. If you're under a lot of stress, if you are not physically there, your guests cannot enjoy themselves. They're going to feel guilty, and you don't want that. I want your party to be so much fun for you that you cannot wait to schedule the next one. So you have to plan a party that works for you. You have to have an attitude that works for you. Don't let anybody else bully you into doing something that does not fit your needs or your schedule. You have to serve refreshments that fit into the time frame and fit with your expertise. If you're not a cook, much of a cook, then don't do elaborate refreshments, food. Plan an elaborate menu that you are just going to go nuts trying to prepare. This is no time for Julie and Julia, or Julia and Julie, whichever way it went. Don't do that to yourself. You have to do an event that fits into the amount of time you have, and you have to allow other people to do things for this event, including somebody coming earlier to help you with last-minute things and to keep you company while you're finishing up, so that you are the number one guest at your own party. Let's see. Cocktail party. Cocktail party is probably one of the best parties you can have during the holiday season. All you need are a whole bunch of nibbles, whole bunch. You can do it as an open house. Nobody should be staying at your party and getting absolutely hammered. Hire somebody to tend bar so that they can monitor how much is being consumed and make sure, that your brother-in-law is not getting drunk on his butt and trying to drive home with, your sister-in-law and the 3 kids. Well, kids should be in a cocktail party, but, you understand what I mean. So cocktail parties work great for the holidays. And they're very easy to do because it's just a matter of going out and buying every kind of hors d'oeuvre you can find and doing a cheese tray and different dips and so on. Speaking of dips, one final dip, shrimp dip. You need 1/2 a cup of mayonnaise, 4 1/2 ounces of cream cheese, 1 small can of shrimp drained, and 1 small grated onion. Combine the ingredients in a food processor until well blended, and then serve with flatbread or crackers. I like getting an interesting mix of crackers. I like the water crackers and the cracked pepper ones and, the multigrain ones. I look for interesting crackers that complement my dips really well. For the holiday season, I'm featuring a variety of our books every day as free Kindle downloads every day except for Sundays, because I find, my listener, you all do family stuff on Sunday. You're not spending a whole lot of time online. Today's books are Discouraged Moms Devotions to Go, Diva Delights Devotions to Go, and Diva Devotions to Go. I'll have these up on the blog so that you can click on them, or just go to the Kindle store, go to Amazon.com, and then look at the drop-down menu for the different departments or however they have it broken down, and go to the Kindle. And in Kindle, type in Devotions to Go. The books come up, and then just look for the ones that have 000 for the price. And click on that, and you can download it for free. Do you have somebody you're giving a Kindle to? Set up an account for them and start downloading free books to their Kindle. There's a variety of free books every day on Kindle. If you want to list two sources for you, one is Inspired Reads, READS. Go there and sign up for their updates. They'll send you a couple of emails every day with free Kindle books. They tend to be Christian books and inspirational books. The other one is Pixels of Ink, and they do a variety of books. I like them because I download free mysteries, and read them. And they do the free ones. Some of them, they'll sometimes list one that you have to pay for, but they mostly do free ones. There are also different people that post on Twitter that list free Kindle books. So you can, by the time you give them their Kindle, you can have all kinds of free books already downloaded on their account, on their Kindle. Almost out of time. Before I go, I want to say happy birthday to my mom. She would have been 90 today. Unfortunately, she's not here. My mom, instead of being 90 today, will always be 52. And I miss her every day. She's the reason I love people so much. My mother never, ever knew a stranger. She could stand in a grocery line and talk to somebody like, they were a long-lost sorority sister. I remember one time the phone rang, and she chatted on the phone for 10 minutes and hung up, and I asked who was that, and it turned out it was the wrong number. But it took her that long. She was just talking away to this person, thinking it was my Aunt Mary, and it wasn't. But my mother just never a stranger her entire life. She talked to absolutely everybody, and I'm the same way, to the embarrassment of my husband and daughter. My mother loved parties. She loved to entertain, and she taught me so much. Most of the reason I do what I do with entertaining and relationships and everything is because of everything my mom taught me. Not only about entertaining, but also because she had so much stress in her life, and it was hard on her. And I want to make sure other women don't go through what she went through. So I want you to enjoy your life and have a good time. So happy birthday, Mama. I miss you, and I love you. Well, that's about all for today. Hopefully our plumbing will be in good working order for tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm talking about little things. I'm going to talk about like Christmas cards and just the things that weren't big enough to warrant doing an entire show, but still important enough that we should talk about them. So it's about time for Mr. Diva to get started. Mr. Diva, the audio tech, happy audio sound check day. Check. 1, 2, 1, 2. I am Jean Ann Duckworth. I want to wish you a life filled with joy.
Thank you for joining us for Life of Simple Joy. Life of Simple Joy is brought to you by Devotions to Go. Small enough to fit in your hand, powerful enough to fill you with the Word of God each day. Life of Simple Joy is the production of C Media. And thank you for listening.